like an Ariana College of Congress thing happening too, right?
Yeah,
like,
seriously.
send a letter to your lawmaker and then also come work on the Hill
Yeah.
and like really make a difference that way. I'm curious, and this is the big pink elephant in the room for everybody in DC is the Trump effect, right? And I know it's a belabored topic, but it's belabored because I think it still is having an impact. And so I'm curious from both of y'all's perspectives, because you are on such different sides of advocacy and yet speaking to the same people. What, if any, has the effect been from positive, negative, et cetera, of the Trump presidency? Is there more interest? Are the issues different? What's been the effect from y'all's point of view?
I'll go first and say that we are a bipartisan organization. But I will say that has Trump had an effect on the level of engagement? Absolutely. I don't know how he couldn't. So regardless of how you feel about our president, love him or hate him, he has leveraged social media in ways that no other presidency has. But more importantly, and this is going back to shift in generation from Gen X to millennials and Gen Zs, is that never, at least in my lifetime, and I think my parents' lifetime, has a presidency been the front page leading story of every single news day of his entire presidency. So it is inescapable, the news about what's going on in DC, in Congress. It's like sand. It's just like you cannot keep it out. And so how can it not affect engagement? Because it's part of your everyday lives now. It's part of all of our conversations. That's never been that way in the past. There's certainly been major events that have been talked about. I mean, I remember the Gulf War. I remember the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal. I remember 9/11, where there were surges in which this became the thing that you talked about all the time. But now that's just to talk about politics at the dinner table, totally normal. And so has that had an effect? Absolutely.
And Emily, from your perspective too?
Yeah, so very similar. We're nonpartisan. So whenever we register to vote, it's actually something we train our volunteers on. People will get haggled, or people will get sort of spoken to at a music festival if there's a weird altercation, like someone will start screaming about the president or something like that. We train our volunteers to be like, hey, we can't talk about any specific president. If you want to register to vote, I can do that. If not, we can end this conversation. I think there's been an increase of intensity on both sides. So we've had to make our training more if you feel uncomfortable in a space where someone's getting really aggressive on either side, pro or anti any candidate, really remove yourself from the situation. Don't get involved in that conversation. So we really try to stay away from that. But I will say, we register voters at Jimmy Buffett concerts, and we also register voters with Ariana Grande on a Beyonce tour. So we see a spectrum of voters, and I think, people were so shocked by the last election, and I think there was a lot that happened, like Bernie Sanders and the grassroots, and people being really shocked at what happened in 2016, that I think people are really wanting to get engaged and get involved. So I think the effect has been a spark of movement on both sides, because I think both sides have a lot of passion about what their mission is and moving something forward. So I think surprisingly both sides have been much more active in wanting to be registered to vote and wanting their mission and what their perspective is to be the new presidency.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And like I said at the beginning, it's be really interesting to see what happens in 2020 and what effect that has on everything as well. And so, Emily, one of the things that we were talking about before this started was your approach of this concept of vote tripling and asking people to invite their friends to register to vote too. And this seems like a tactic that could translate really well to the advocacy side in terms of the issue campaign and encouraging other folks, your friends and family, to take action as well and things like that. Talk to me a little bit more about that program and the strategy in place.
So I'm really excited about that program. We're gonna probably roll it out in the next couple of weeks, which means a lot of work for me. But so this concept called vote tripling our director of voter engagement brought it to my attention. And basically what it is if people, pledge to get 3 people in their universe to vote, they write those names down, then you send them a message. Hey, Emily, did you get Lindsay, Stephanie, and Rochelle to vote with you this year? Are you going to get them to vote? 3 names of people. If you consistently are seeing the names of people that are familiar to you and messaging coming to you from an organization, the thought is that you're more likely to feel familiar with that message and you're going to be really excited to actually engage on it. So what our plan is we are giving all of our team leaders iPads. We're going to have a phone to action pledge with pledge to get these 3 people to vote. We're going to train, it doesn't have to be your friend, it's that, sibling of yours that never votes, it's that classmate you had in college that was really anti-voting, it's your uncle that, says voting doesn't matter. Write their names down, or write your friends' names down, and then we will remind you a couple times before the election in new and engaging ways, with text message and with email. And we're going to experiment with some things, like asking people, hey, you should get coffee with these 3 people, and you guys should talk about voting and make an election day plan. So we're really going to try to use that to blend it with other get out the vote actions and see if that can really have a bigger effect. So I'm excited to see how that works. I think a lot of voting organizations are going to adopt that concept, and I'm really excited because if everyone does that, then that's just an explosive amount of new people that are going to vote. So I really hope that a lot of people do that.
Yeah, it'll be cool to see how that plays out. Rochelle, you mentioned the College of Congress Instagram earlier. You talked about Ariana Grande's Instagram presence. From a platform perspective, TikTok has been in the news this week with China with privacy and things like this. There's WhatsApp, there's Facebook, which is now the old people's platform, which is different from what it was even just 8 years ago. There's Twitter. How do you decide, and what are you learning from the people that you're working with in terms of what their preferences are and how people should be communicating? I mean, is it still just Instagram? Are there other tools that y'all are hearing about?
Okay. So Instagram story is one that we really like to engage with. There are really good other platforms. I know I actually got rid of my Snapchat, but I realized that Gen Z is still using it, and TikTok and all that. I don't know what the answer is, but I would love to be able to, so like the technologies we use for advocacy and for voter engagement work really well with the old people technologies with Facebook, with Twitter, and like with Instagram. We can do a swipe up and have an advocacy campaign in there. If the newer technologies open up so that we can start really embedding them, I know we one time tried to do like a picture with Snapchat. It takes a lot of experimentation, and I definitely don't have the answers. I think, to go back to our first thing we talked about, we're going to have to get one of those young people that knows everything, that's one of those young people that's hype, that's hip, that knows the current new thing and the language people like to speak, and the size you need to put your font to have people want to click on it. I think they're going to have to drive that. I don't think that even I could make that decision. We're going to have to get the 20-year-olds to do that for us.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if my digital manager were here on stage right now, and he's Gen Z, he's fantastic, he would absolutely nail the answer to this question. But at my conference, the Gen Zers, the ones that they put up on stage and made me feel really awkward, did say that they do use TikTok. So apparently that's a thing.
I still don't understand that platform, so it's good to know. Maybe we need to look at a phone to action TikTok integration of some kind in the future. Who knows? But that actually leads me to it's a nice segue to the looking at the future of advocacy and what the next 10 years really holds for this industry. And I think back to 10 years ago, and I don't think we ever imagined that we would be receiving text messages from campaign staff or from issue campaigns that we were signed up for. And so it'll be really interesting, I think, to see where advocacy goes from here. And I would love to get y'all's perspectives on this and do a little round robin. I think Phone to Action has put a lot of thought into this, and we released a State of Advocacy report earlier this year where we made some predictions, and I wanted to just touch on a couple of them because I think they resonate here too, and they were all just so interesting. So the first being machine learning and data, and this is, from our perspective, is that you're now given access to thousands and tens of thousands and even millions of data points, where if you are using it in the right way and using the right tools, you can start to predict not only the time of day and the day of the week, but exactly who you need to activate on a particular issue depending on where they stand on it. It's just going to be really fascinating to me, I think, to see where those algorithms go in the next 10 years, because I'm expecting there to be a lot of tools in place for this industry to use to help you optimize those campaigns in an even better way and spend your ad money in the ways that you need to, and all of those types of things. So I think that's the first one. The second prediction that we made was artificial intelligence and the rise of bots, which sounds really ominous and scary, but you're already seeing on this on the consumer side, where if you're trying to make a return to a brand or something like that, you're most likely interacting with a chatbot on their website to ask questions to, right? So we'll, I think, see a lot more of these bots come out in advocacy, right? Being able to allow people to connect to their lawmakers, or connect people to vote, register to vote, or things like that. Even maybe apply for a job through a chatbot. Who knows? And the third, which I actually don't think was included in the report, but was something that just fascinated me, was so Phone to Action has a fellowship program every summer where we have high schoolers come in and learn more about the industry and work on different projects. And this summer we had a group of kids from Virginia that came in. They're 16, 17 years old, and they created a virtual reality system for advocacy, where they were allowing, the system worked where you put on the virtual reality headset, which was my first foray into VR, which was a very entertaining experience. And you were actually telling the system your name and address, connecting with your lawmaker, and then given a virtual tour and a visit to your lawmaker's office. It was this experience of being able to deliver a letter to your lawmaker and having this interaction through virtual reality. And it just really kind of got my gears turning. These are Gen Zers developing this, right? So if these kids, if this is what they are seeking, then I'm expecting that might be what it looks like in 10 years from now, that we're having these virtual reality experiences with our lawmakers and encouraging more grassroots supporters to walk the halls of Congress when they're not able to actually come to DC. So that's going to be, I think, really interesting, and would love to get each of y'all's thoughts on where, Rochelle, we'll start with you. Like, where is College of Congress going to be in 10 years? What does that look like in 2029, 2030 from now? It's just hard to imagine.
We've actually planned for that. But first, before I talk about that, I want to add and lend a little bit of credibility to your prediction. So, true story. This last week, while I was in Chicago, I'm leaving the conference and I'm driving in the backseat of a Lyft with my CEO. And she and I are kind of doing a little back and forth to prepare for this event. And we're talking about just the things that you mentioned, the learning algorithms and big data and AI and sort of the future of that. And I'm like feeling very smart because I'm telling her about this article that I read about it and how, this is what's going to happen in 10 years. And then all of a sudden, my Lyft driver, who I want to be about, 21, 22, kind of looks in the rearview mirror and says, sorry to interrupt, but do you mind if I chime in on your conversation? I'm a senior in college and I'm a computer science major, and for my senior capstone project, I had to design one of those learning algorithms that you're talking about. So I just wanted to lend, a little bit more context to this thing that you're clearly stumbling through. And then for the next 45 minutes, I absolutely got schooled on the future of technology from my 21-year-old Lyft driver on what is actually happening now. He laid it all out for me, like what they're doing in China, what they're doing with TikTok, and he was like, and it was totally normal to him. Us in the back seat are like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying. He's like, oh yeah, no, it's a great industry, you can get into it now. And I'm like, this is Gen Z. Gen Z is, they understand it, they communicate it, they accept it, they are preparing, they're figuring out how to monetize it. Like, this is the reality. So one, yeah, good prediction. But in terms of where College of Congress kind of fits in, I really hope to see us as the organization that helps to finally close some of the diversity and socioeconomic gaps in Congress, particularly on the staffing side of it. So already we have some plans early next year to roll out an online training program that's targeted towards low-income students who want to come to Capitol Hill and intern. That gives them really the hard and soft skills that they need to prepare to come work in DC, to work in public policy, in public service, but also teaches them just the very basics of like how to budget for that experience, how to take advantage of the different programs that you may not know that are available to you to help you with your student loans, and really make sure that they're not just prepared from the workforce side, but also are prepared, they have the life skills they need to do it. In addition, we work closely with other organizations in DC, with the House Committee on Modernization of Congress, on helping to kind of shape some of their suggestions, and we also work pretty closely with the House Diversity and Inclusion Office, and so my hope is that using technology, we can reach thousands upon thousands of students over the next 10 years and really become thought leaders on congressional staffing issues in general.
Well, and if engagement trends like it is, I can imagine that's probably what it will be, right? I mean, Gen Z seems to be really engaged in politics and wants to come to Washington and make things happen. So I'm hoping that that's truly the case. So, all right, Emily, headcount 10 years from now, are we going to see the comeback of the Tupac hologram or advocacy robots like signing people up to vote? I mean, what's 2030 look like for headcount?
That would be cool. I guess to sort of start off, I don't think headcount would ever use robots to register people to vote because our whole value prop is making voting cool and that human interaction. And like having someone who's dressed up in the way that you are when you're going to the festival or the concert, actually approaching you. So I don't know if we would do that hologram, but that makes me think it would be really cool to have maybe artists from the past or artists that can't visit the booth with a clipboard. Maybe Jerry Garcia for any Grateful Dead fans, or like something like really cool. We could have, artists engage with people in our democracy. We already have democracy lounges. We could have a hologram in a democracy lounge. So I'll pitch that. But back to your question, I think in 2030, in an ideal world, I don't think headcount is going to be a voter registration organization. I want headcount to be a get out the vote and voter education organization in 2030, because by 2030, it is our hope that voter registration is so easy and automatic so that everyone is registered to vote when they're eligible, and the barrier to doing that is completely lifted so that we can really focus on actually getting people out to the polls and being educated on voting process, like what is a primary and all that kind of thing. So that's my goal for 2030. And I love the concept of virtual reality. I think, our executive director has actually talked a lot about how cool it would be to have a person approach the booth, and this happens so often at a festival or at a concert, and say, what does that so-and-so candidate think about women's rights? What does that guy think about economic reform? What does that guy think about pot? A lot of people are interested in cannabis reform at certain festivals and concerts. And it would be really awesome if we could say, why don't you take a look and see, put on a virtual reality, press, this candidate on this, and they can actually be brought to a campaign rally and brought to that moment in time where they can have 2 minutes of hearing that person's perspective on cannabis or environment or women's rights or anything that they're interested in. So I think then that person would be more likely to then go out and vote because they feel connected to a candidate. And they could see multiple. I actually think that could happen before 10 years from now, which would be really, I think that would be really interesting. So I don't know exactly what we'll adopt. We are currently hiring for a director of digital strategy. So when we hire that person, when we do hire that person, hopefully they can tell you all what we'll be doing, and they can tell me what we should be doing. But through machine learning and through all of the data that's now accessible, what my hope is that there's such low voter turnout in the United States, and it can't just be because of state-by-state laws and rules and things that are changing. It can't just be because of that. There's something else there, and I think if we continue to investigate, like everyone's thirsty to know like why people aren't going out to the polls, if we continue to investigate and continue to learn, timing of day, message, what people are connecting to, and really actually make it into a science. I think that machine learning will change the game for everyone. Everyone in advocacy, everyone in voting, everyone in voting rights. And getting, higher engagement, I think, would be the outcome of learning why. And I think that would be great.
Awesome. Well, we have about 10 minutes left, so I definitely want to open it up to questions.